no carro, bicho. Um no dois, no três, vou sarrando na PT. 4, 5, me tacar no carro, bicho. Um no dois, no três, vou sarrando na PT. 4, 5.
Bim, bim, bim.
Bienvenido.
Bienvenue. Yeah, it's been a while.
Willkommen.
Willkommen.
Bienvenue. Welcome.
Welcome.
Welcome back to Indignant Desert Birds. We've flown the coop and we missed our Thursday show. We might be changing this to Saturdays. Please let us know if you would prefer Saturdays to Thursdays.
Yeah, it's just been a little bit hectic, and sometimes Thursdays we can't commit to a time. I think it's one of the issues because we've done early birds, we've done late night birds, but the late night birds are really like sporadic, shall we say? Because sometimes we come into the like late birds or mid birds. Like we've done, I think 7 o'clock, 10 o'clock. It's run the 6 o'clock, 5 o'clock. We've run the gambit on the evenings shows, and
the gamut.
Gamut.
It's the gamut, I think, Fletcher.
Gamut. All right. Darn gamut. But we kind of figured that maybe Saturday could be easier for us. Let us know in the comments if you guys agree, if you feel like a Saturday.
Well, if you guys think, I think what we're really asking is if it would work for our listeners, Fletcher. That's
what I'm saying.
Yes, if you would like, I think we can make whatever work. We've been experimenting since we started the channel, or rather reinvigorated the channel just almost a year ago now, not quite. And we have tried Thursdays, but as Fletcher said, that can sometimes be challenging to have one time. It's not that Thursdays are difficult, it's that what time on Thursdays. So we tried different times. So Saturdays, maybe we can always stick to a time that might make it easier for you all to join us. But we're all here today to celebrate the 100th birthday, which a lot of people are talking about all over the world, literally all over the world, not just the United States, of the celebrated American author from the South, Flannery O'Connor.
Yeah, I mean, it's anniversary. She would have been 100 this year, and I
think this month.
Yeah, it's really amazing because her life has touched so many, and a lot of people. Whoa, somebody died.
Nobody died.
But yeah. So she would have been 100. This year, and there's been celebrations all over. I've dragged Ursula along with my fascination for Flannery O'Connor. I think it's because we both have a little bit of tooth for the macabre, shall we say, or the darker side of human nature, which we all know. I think.
In other words, Fletcher is morbid, and this author, who is Catholic, is also known to be very morbid.
Yeah, I think we have the same, St. Paul thing where it's like, oh, my works are filthy rags and stuff like that, but yeah, so we are celebrating 100 years of what should we say of her life. And it's all kinds of things that are happening in Georgia. She was from Georgia. We're gonna read one of my favorite short stories of her. It's not gonna take long. She was prevalent in the short story format. But I do want to afterwards. I did want to chat a little bit about who she was, and what an interesting childhood she had and all this kind of thing. So we are.
And that's a picture of her there.
Yeah, so that's
black and white.
There. She did have peacocks. They did raise peacocks. If you notice there, you see the peacocks with the one thing many people don't know, that the fancy peacocks, the one with the fancy feathers, those are the male peacocks. They adorn themselves to attract females. And they would raise them on the farm. She's wearing crutches there because she did have horrible disease that a lot of people still have. It is treatable now, which is lupus. I have a cousin that has it. So I think our families have a little bit of that. We do have a little bit of that. Uh, history with her that I kind of endear myself to her. Although she's from the South, but I'm from the other South. The South over there. And I do want to maybe make a little video later, or maybe we'll touch on another one of these literature topics, because she always gets slammed for being racist, which is ridiculous. And we do want to talk about it because she is Catholic, and people say Catholics can't be racist in a sense, and it's like, yeah, there could be some. It's not a huge thing in the church because we are a universal church, and we'll talk a little bit about the church a little bit later also. So stick up for that. But we do want to get into our reading of Flannery. So let me see, make the magics of the interflex. And this is, you can buy this book. Usually you find it in Flannery O'Connor's, and she has short stories, and they come in different sizes of a book or all kind of stuff. You could also go, like I did, Notre Dame University, which is a Catholic university. Sometimes people don't know that, and sometimes they don't know that. But they do have a PDF of it. So if you're a student and you have to read her short stories, and hey, they do have PDFs of most of her short stories. So I think it's a great thing to read, and thank you for joining us as we're reading it. And Ursula, do you want to
Sure. Let's
start
begin.
us off?
And
Yeah.
as you said, one of the best ways, or as you implied, one of the best ways to understand this author is perhaps just through the work itself. So we're going to read a story that many people know from this very fine and celebrated and worthily celebrated author, as Fletcher indicated, who would have turned 100, I believe, this week or last week, if she were still alive and not taken from us so soon with lupus. And this article, or rather this short story, is called A Good Man is Hard to Find. It is in a collection of her work. I think it's called The Collected Stories, and it was written about 1953. The grandmother didn't want to go to Florida. She wanted to visit some of her connections in East Tennessee, and she was seizing at every chance to change Bailey's mind. Bailey was the son she lived with, her only boy. He was sitting on the edge of his chair at the table, bent over the orange sports section of the journal. "Now look here, Bailey," she said. "See here, read this." And she stood with one hand on her thin hip and the other rattling the newspaper at his bald head. "Here, this fellow that calls himself the Misfit is a loose from the federal pen and headed toward Florida. And you read here what it says he did to these people. Just you read it. I wouldn't take my children in any direction with a criminal like that a loose in it. I couldn't answer to my conscience if I did." Bailey didn't look up from his reading, so she wheeled around then and faced the children's mother, a young woman in slacks, whose face was as broad and innocent as a cabbage, and was tied around with a green headkerchief that had 2 points on the top like a rabbit's ears. She was sitting on the sofa feeding the baby his apricots out of a jar. "The children have been to Florida before," the old lady said. "You all ought to take them somewhere else for a change so they would see different parts of the world and be broad. They never have been to East Tennessee." The children's mother didn't seem to hear her, but the 8-year-old boy, John Wesley, a stocky child with glasses, said, "If you don't want to go to Florida, why don't you stay at home?" He and the little girl, June Star, were reading the funny papers on the floor. "She wouldn't stay at home to be queen for a day," June Star said without raising her yellow head. Yes, and what would you do if this fellow, the misfit, caught you? The grandmother asked. I'd smack his face, John Wesley said. She wouldn't stay at home for $1,000,000, June Star said. Afraid she'd miss something. She has to go everywhere we go. All right, miss, the grandmother said. Just remember that next time you want me to curl your hair. June Star said her hair was naturally curly. The next morning, the grandmother was the first one in the car, ready to go. She had her big black valise that looked like the head of a hippopotamus in one corner, and underneath it, she was hiding a basket with Pitty Sing, the cat, in it. She didn't intend for the cat to be left alone in the house for 3 days because he would miss her too much, and she was afraid he might brush against one of the gas burners and accidentally asphyxiate himself. Her son Bailey didn't like to arrive at a motel with a cat. She sat in the middle of the back seat with John Wesley and June Starr on either side of her. Bailey and the children's mother and the baby sat in front, and they left Atlanta at 8:45 with the mileage on the car at 55890. The grandmother wrote this down because she thought it would be interesting to say how many miles they had been when they got back. It took them 20 minutes to reach the outskirts of the city. The old lady settled herself comfortably, removing her white cotton gloves and putting them up with her purse on the shelf in front of the back window. The children's mother still had on slacks and still had her head tied up in a green kerchief. But the grandmother had on a navy blue straw sailor hat with a bunch of white violets on the brim and a navy blue dress with a small white dot in the print. Her collars and cuffs were white organdy trimmed with lace, and at her neckline, she had pinned a purple spray of cloth violets containing a sachet. In case of an accident, anyone seeing her dead on the highway would know at once that she was a lady. She said she thought it was going to be a good day for driving, neither too hot nor too cold, and she cautioned Bailey that the speed limit was 55 miles an hour and that the patrolmen hid themselves behind billboards and small clumps of trees and sped out after you before you had a chance to slow down. She pointed out interesting details of the scenery. Stone Mountain, the blue granite that in some places came up to both sides of the highway, the brilliant red clay banks slightly streaked with purple, and the various crops that made rows of green lacework on the ground. The trees were full of silver white sunlight, and the meanest of them sparkled. The children were reading comic magazines, and their mother had gone back to sleep. Let's go through Georgia fast, so we won't have to look at it much, John Wesley said. If I were a little boy, said the grandmother, I wouldn't talk about my native state that way. Tennessee has the mountains and Georgia has the hills. Tennessee is just a hillbilly dumping ground, John Wesley said, and Georgia is a lousy state too. You said it, June Star said. In my time, said the grandmother, folding her thin veined fingers, children were more respectful of their native states and their parents and everything else. People did right then. Oh, look at the cute little pickaninny, she said, and pointed to a Negro child standing in the door of a shack. Wouldn't that make a picture now? She asked, and they all turned and looked at the little Negro out of the back window. He waved. He didn't have any breeches on, June Star said. He probably didn't have any, the grandmother explained. Little Negroes in the country don't have things like we do. If I could paint, I'd paint that picture, she said. The children exchanged comic books. The grandmother offered to hold the baby, and the children's mother passed him over the front seat to her. She set him on her knee and bounced him and told him about the things they were passing. She rolled her eyes and screwed up her mouth and stuck her leathery, thin face into his smooth, bland one. Occasionally, he gave her a far-away smile. They passed a large cotton field with 5 or 6 graves fenced in the middle of it, like a small island. Look at the graveyard, the grandmother said, pointing it out. That was the old family burying ground. That belonged to the plantation.
Where's the plantation? John Wesley asked.
Gone with the wind, said the grandmother. Ha ha! When the children finished all the comic books they had brought, they opened the lunch and ate it. The grandmother ate a peanut butter sandwich and an olive and would not let the children throw the box and the paper napkins out the window. When there was nothing else to do, they played a game by choosing a cloud and making the other two guess what shape it suggested. John Wesley took one the shape of a cow, and June Star guessed a cow, and John Wesley said no, an automobile, and June Star said he didn't play fair, and they began to slap each other over the grandmother. The grandmother said she would tell them a story if they would keep quiet. When she told a story, she rolled her eyes and waved her head and was very dramatic. She said once when she was a maiden lady, she had been courted by a Mr. Edgar's Atkins tea garden from Jasper, Georgia. She said he was a very good looking man and a gentleman, and that he brought her a watermelon every Saturday afternoon with his initials cut in it, EAT. Well, one Saturday, she said, Mr. Teagarden brought the watermelon and there was nobody at home, and he left it on the front porch and returned in his buggy to Jasper. But she never got the watermelon, she said, because a Negro boy ate it when he saw the initials EAT. This story tickled John Wesley's funny bone, and he giggled and giggled, but June Star didn't think it was any good. She said she wouldn't marry a man that just brought her a watermelon on Saturday. The grandmother said she would have done well to marry Mr. Teagarden because he was a gentleman and had bought Coca-Cola stock when it first came out, and that he had died only a few years ago, a very wealthy man. They stopped at the tower for barbecued sandwiches. The tower was a part stucco and part wood filling station and dance hall set in a clearing outside of Timothy. A fat man named Red Sammy Butts ran it, and there were signs stuck here and there on the building and for miles up and down the highway saying, "Try Red Sammy's famous barbecue, none like famous Red Sammy's, Red Sam, the fat boy with the happy laugh, a veteran, Red Sammy's your man." Red Sammy was lying on the bare ground outside the tower with his head under a truck while a gray monkey about a foot high, chained to a small chinaberry tree, chattered nearby. The monkey sprang back into the tree and got on the highest limb as soon as he saw the children jump out of the car and run toward him. Inside the tower was a long, dark room with a counter at one end and tables at the other and dancing space in the middle. They all sat down at a board table next to the Nickelodeon, and Red Sam's wife, a tall, burnt brown woman with hair and eyes lighter than her skin, came and took their order. The children's mother put a dime in the machine and played the Tennessee Waltz, and the grandmother said that tune always made her want to dance. She asked Bailey if he would like to dance, but he only glared at her. He didn't have a naturally sunny disposition like she did, and trips made him nervous. The grandmother's brown eyes were very bright. She swayed her head from side to side and pretended she was dancing in her chair. June Star said play something else she could tap to, so the children's mother put in another dime and played a fast number, and June Star stepped out onto the dance floor and did her tap routine. "Ain't she cute?" Red Sam's wife said, leaning over the counter. "Would you like to come to be my little girl?" "No, I certainly wouldn't," June Star said. "I wouldn't live in a broken down place like this for $1,000,000. And she ran back to the table. "Ain't she cute?" the woman repeated, stretching her mouth politely. "Ain't you ashamed?" hissed the grandmother. Red Sam came in and told his wife to quit lounging on the counter and hurry up with these people's order. His khaki trousers reached just to his hip bones, and his stomach hung over them like a sack of meal swaying under his shirt. He came over and sat down at a table nearby and let out a combination sigh and yodel. "You can't win," he said. "You can't win." And he wiped his sweating red face off with a gray handkerchief. "These days, you don't know who to trust," he said. "Ain't that the truth?" "People are certainly not nice like they used to be," said the grandmother. "Two fellers came in here last week," Red Sammy said, "driving a Chrysler. It was an old beat-up car, but it was a good one, and these boys looked all right to me. Said they worked at the mill, and you know I let them fellas charge the gas they bought. Now, why did I do that?" "Because you're a good man," the grandmother said at once.
Yeah, I
Yes,
suppose to, Red Sam said as he was struck with his answer.
his wife brought the orders, carrying the 5 plates all at once without a tray, 2 in each hand and 1 balanced on her arm. "It isn't a soul in this green world of God's that you can trust," she said. "And I don't count nobody out of that, not nobody," she repeated, looking at Red Sammy. Did you read about that criminal, the misfit that's escaped? Asked the grandmother. I wouldn't be a bit surprised if he didn't attack this place right here, said the woman. If he hears about it being here, I wouldn't be none surprised to see him. If he hears it's 2 cents in the cash register, I wouldn't be at all surprised if he.
That'll do, Red Sam said. Go bring these people their Coca-Colas. And the woman went off to get the rest of the order. A good man is hard to find, Red Sammy said. Everything is getting terrible. I remember the day you could go off and leave your screen door unlatched. Not no more.
He and the grandmother discussed better times. The old lady said that in her opinion, Europe was entirely to blame for the way things were now. She said the way Europe acted, you would think we were made of money. And Red Sam said it was no use talking about it. She was exactly right. The children ran outside into the white sunlight and looked at the monkey and the lacy china berry tree. He was busy catching fleas on himself and biting each one carefully between his teeth as if it were a delicacy. They drove off again into the hot afternoon. The grandmother took cat naps and woke up every few minutes with her own snoring. Outside of Toomsboro, she woke up and recalled an old plantation that she had visited in this neighborhood once when she was a young lady. She said the house had 6 white columns across the front and that there was an avenue of oaks leading up to it and 2 little wooden trellis arbors on either side in front where you sat down with your suitor after a stroll in the garden. She recalled exactly which road to turn off to get to it. She knew that Bailey would not be willing to lose any time looking at an old house. But the more she talked about it, the more she wanted to see it once again and find out if the little twin arbors were still standing. There was a secret panel in this house, she said craftily, not telling the truth, but wishing that she were. And the story went that all the family silver was hidden in it when Sherman came through, but it was never found. Hey, John Wesley said, let's go see it. We'll find it. We'll poke all the woodwork and find it. Who lives there? Where do you turn off at? Hey, Pop, can't we turn off there? We never have seen a house with a secret panel, June Star shrieked. Let's go to the house with the secret panel. Hey, Pop, can't we go see the house with the secret panel? It's not far from here, I know, the grandmother said. It wouldn't take over 20 minutes. Bailey was looking straight ahead. His jaw was as rigid as a horseshoe. No, he said. The children began to yell and scream that they wanted to see the house with the secret panel. John Wesley kicked the back of the front seat, and June Star hung over her mother's shoulder and whined desperately into her ear that they never had any fun, even on their vacation, that they could never do what they wanted to do. The baby began to scream, and John Wesley kicked the back of the seat so hard that his father could feel the blows at his kidney.
All right, he shouted and drew the car to a stop at the side of the road. Will you all go shut up? Will you all just shut up for a second? If you don't shut up, we won't go anywhere.
It would be very educational for them, the grandmother murmured.
All right, Bailey said. But get this. This is the only time we're going to stop for anything like this. This is the one and only time.
The dirt road that you have to turn down is about a mile back, the grandmother directed. I marked it when we passed.
A dirt road?
Bailey groaned. After they had turned around and were headed toward the dirt road, the grandmother recalled other points about the house. The beautiful glass over the front doorway and the candle lamp in the hall. John Wesley said that the secret panel was probably in the fireplace.
You can't go inside this house, Bailey said. You don't know who lives there. While y'all talk to the people up front, I'll run around behind and get in the window, John Wesley suggested.
We'll all stay in the car, his mother said. They turned onto the dirt road and the car raced roughly along in a swirl of pink dust. The grandmother recalled the times when there were no paved roads, and 30 miles was a day's journey. The dirt road was hilly, and there were sudden washes in it, and sharp curves on dangerous embankments. All at once, they would be on a hill, looking down over the blue tops of trees for miles around. Then the next minute, they would be in a red depression with the dust-coated trees looking down on them.
This place had better turn up in a minute, Bailey said, or I'm going to turn around.
The road looked as if no one had traveled on it for months. It's not much farther, the grandmother said, and just as she said it, a horrible thought came to her. The thought was so embarrassing that she turned red in the face, and her eyes dilated and her feet jumped up, upsetting her valise in the corner. The instant the valise moved, the newspaper top she had over the basket under it rose with a snarl, and Pity Sing the cat sprang onto Bailey's shoulder. The children were thrown to the floor, and their mother, clutching the baby, was thrown into the door onto the ground. The old lady was thrown into the front seat. The car turned over once and landed right side up in a gulch over the side of the road. Bailey remained in the driver's seat with the cat, gray striped with a broad white face and an orange nose, clinging to his neck like a caterpillar. As soon as the children saw they could move their arms and legs, they scrambled out the car, shouting, "We've had an accident!" The grandmother was curled up under the dashboard, hoping she was injured so that Bailey's wrath would not come down on her all at once. The horrible thought she had had before the accident was that the house she had remembered so vividly was not in Georgia, but in Tennessee. Bailey removed the cat from his neck with both hands and flung it out the window against the side of a pine tree. Then he got out the car and started looking for the children's mother. She was sitting against the side of the red gutted ditch, holding the screaming baby, but she only had a cut down her face and a broken shoulder. "We've had an accident!" The children screamed in a frenzy of delight. "But nobody's killed," June Star said with disappointment as the grandmother limped out of the car, her hat still pinned to her head, but the broken front brim standing up at a jaunty angle and the violent spray hanging off the side. They all sat down in the ditch except the children to recover from the shock. They were all shaking. "Maybe a car will come along," said the children's mother hoarsely. "I believe I have injured an organ," said the grandmother, pressing her side, but no one answered her. Bailey's teeth were clattering. He had on a yellow sports shirt with bright blue parrots designed in it, and his face was as yellow as the shirt. The grandmother decided that she would not mention that the house was in Tennessee. The road was about 10 feet above, and they could see only the tops of the trees on the other side of it. Behind the ditch they were sitting in, there were more woods, tall and dark and deep. In a few minutes, they saw a car some distance away on top of a hill, coming slowly as if the occupants were watching them. The grandmother stood up and waved both arms dramatically to attract their attention. The car continued to come on, slowly, disappeared around a bend, and appeared again, moving even slower on top of the hill they had gone over. It was a big, black, battered, hearse like automobile. There were 3 men in it. It came to a stop just over them, and for some minutes, the driver looked down with a steady, expressionless gaze to where they were sitting and didn't speak. Then he turned his head and muttered something to the other two, and they got out. One was a fat boy in black trousers and a red sweatshirt over a silver stallion embossed on the front of it. He moved around on the right side of them and stood staring, his mouth partly open in a kind of loose grin. The other had on khaki pants and a blue striped coat and a gray hat pulled down very low, hiding most of his face. He came around slowly on the left side. Neither spoke. The driver got out of the car and stood by the side of it, looking down at them. He was an older man than the other two. His hair was just beginning to gray, and he wore silver rimmed spectacles that gave him a scholarly look. He had a long, creased face and didn't have on any shirt or undershirt. He had on blue jeans that were too tight for him and was holding a black hat and a gun. The two boys also had guns. "We've had an accident!" the children screamed. The grandmother had the peculiar feeling that the bespectacled man was someone she knew. His face was as familiar to her as if she had known him all her life, but she could not recall who he was. He moved away from the car and began to come down the embankment, placing his feet carefully so that he wouldn't slip. He had on tan and white shoes and no socks, and his ankles were red and thin.
Good afternoon, he said. I see you had a little spill.
We turned over twice, said the grandmother.
Once, he corrected. We seen it happen. Try their car and see will run, Hiram, he said quietly to the boy with the gray hat.
What you got that gun for? John Wesley said. What you gonna do with that gun?
Lady, the man said with the children's mother, would you mind calling them children to sit down by you? Children make me nervous. I want all y'all to sit right together there where you're at.
What are you telling us what to do for? June Star asked. Behind them, the line of woods gaped like a dark open mouth. Come here, said their mother. Look here now, Bailey began suddenly. We're in a predicament. We're in. The grandmother shrieked. She scrambled to her feet and stood staring. You're the misfit, she said. I recognized you at once.
Yes, the man said, smiling slightly as if he was pleased in spite of himself to be known. But it would be better for y'all, lady, if you hadn't recognized me.
Bailey turned his head sharply and said something to his mother that shocked even the children. The old lady began to cry, and the misfit reddened.
Lady, he said, don't get upset. Sometimes a man saying things he don't mean. I don't reckon he meant to talk to you that way.
You wouldn't shoot a lady, would you? The grandmother said, and removed a clean handkerchief from her cuff and began to slap at her eyes with it. The misfit pointed the toe of his shoe into the ground and made a little hole and then covered it up again.
I would hate to have to, he said.
Listen, the grandmother almost screamed. I know you're a good man. You don't look a bit like you have common blood. I know you must come from nice people.
Yes, ma'am, he said. Finest people in the world. When he smiled, he showed a row of strong white teeth. God never made a finer woman than my mother, and my daddy's heart was pure as gold, he said. The boy with the red sweater shirt had come around behind them and was standing with his gun on his hip. The misfit squatted down on the ground. Watch them children, Bobby Lee, he said. You know they make me nervous. He looked at the six of them huddled together in front of him, and it seemed to be embarrassed, as if he couldn't think of anything to say. Ain't a cloud in the sky, he remarked, looking up at it. Don't see no sun, but don't see no cloud neither.
Yes, it's a beautiful day, said the grandmother. Listen, she said, you shouldn't call yourself the misfit, because I know you're a good man at heart. I can just look at you and tell.
Hush, Bailey yelled. Hush! Everybody shut up and let me handle this. He was squatting in the position of a runner about to sprint forward, but he didn't move. I appreciate that, lady, the misfit said, and drew a little circle on the ground with the butt of his gun. I'll take half an hour to fix this here car, Hiram called, looking for over the race hood of it. Well, first, you and Bobby Lee get him and the little boy to step over yonder with you, the misfit said, pointing to Bailey and John Wesley. The boys want to ask you some things, he said to Bailey. Would you mind stepping back in the woods there with them? Listen, Bailey began. We're in a terrible predicament. Nobody realizes what this is. His voice cracked. His eyes were as blue and intense as the parrots in his shirt and remained perfectly still.
The grandmother reached up to adjust her hat brim as if she were going to the woods with him, but it came off in her hand. She stood staring at it, and after a second she let it fall to the ground. Hiram pulled Bailey up by the arm as if he were assisting an old man. John Wesley caught hold of his father's hand, and Bobby Lee followed. They went off towards the woods, and just as they reached the dark edge, Bailey turned and supporting himself against a gray naked pine tree, he shouted,
I'll be back in a minute, Mama. Wait on me.
Come back this instant! His mother shrilled, but they all disappeared into the woods. Bailey boy! The grandmother called in a tragic voice, but she found she was looking at the misfit squatting on the ground in front of her. I just know you're a good man, she said desperately. You're not a bit common.
None ain't good man, the misfit said after a second if he had considered her statement carefully. But I ain't the worst of the worst neither. My daddy said I was a different breed of dog from my brothers and sisters. You know, Daddy said it's some that can live their whole life without asking about it, and it's others has to know why it is. And this boy is one of them ladders. He's going to be into everything. He put his back hot and look up suddenly and then away deep in the woods as if he were embarrassed again. I'm sorry, I don't have a shirt before you ladies, he said, hunching back his shoulders slightly. We buried our clothes that we had on when we escaped, and we're just making do until we get better. We borrowed this for some folks we had met, he explained.
That's perfectly all right, the grandmother said. Maybe Bailey has an extra shirt in his suitcase.
I look and see terribly, the misfit said.
Where are they taking him? The children's mother screamed.
Daddy was a card himself, the misfit said. You could put anything over on him. He never got in trouble with the authorities, though. Just had the knack of handling them.
You could be honest too if you'd only try, said the grandmother. Think how wonderful it would be to settle down and live a comfortable life and not have to think about somebody chasing you all the time.
The mistress kept scratching in the ground with the butt of his guns as if he was thinking about it. Yes, ma'am. Somebody's always after you, he murmured.
The grandmother noticed how thin his shoulder blades were just behind his hat because she was standing up looking down on him. Do you ever pray? She asked.
He shook his head. All she saw was a black hat wriggle between shoulder blades. None, he said.
There was a pistol shot from the woods, followed closely by another, then silence. The old lady's head jerked around. She could hear the wind move through the treetops like a long, satisfied insuck of breath. Bailey boy, she called.
I was a gospel singer for a while, the misfit said. It's been most everything. Been in the armed service, both land and sea, at home and abroad. Been twitch married, been an undertaker, been them railroads, plowed Mother Earth's, been in a tornado, seen a man burn alive once. And it looked up at the children's mother and the little girl who were sitting closer together, their faces white and their eyes glassy. I even seen a woman flogged, he said.
Pray, pray, the grandmother began. Pray, pray.
Oz never was a bad boy I remember of, the misfit said in almost dreamy voice. But somewhere along the line, I'd done something wrong and got sent to the penitentiary. I was buried alive, and he looked up and held her attention to him by a steady stare.
That's when you should have started to pray, she said. What did you do to get sent to the penitentiary that first time?
I turned to the right. It was a wall, the misfit said, looking up again at the cloudless sky. Turned to the left. It was a wall. Looked up. It was a ceiling. Looked down. It was a floor. I forget what I've done, lady. I sat there and sat there trying to remember what it was that I'd done. I ain't recall it to this day. Once in a while, I would think it was coming to me, but it never come.
Maybe they put you in by mistake, the old lady said vaguely.
No, he said. It was no mistake. They had papers on me.
You must have stolen something, she said.
The misfit sneered slightly. Nobody had nothing I wanted, he said. It was the head doctor at the penitentiary said that I had done was kill my daddy, but I'd known that for a lie. My daddy died in 1919 of the pandemic flu, and I never had a thing to do with it. He was buried in the Mount Hopewell Baptist churchyard, and you can go there see it for yourself.
If you would pray, the old lady said, Jesus would help you.
That's all right, the misfit said.
Well, then, why don't you pray? She asked, trembling with delight suddenly.
I don't want no help, he said. I'm doing all right by myself.
Bobby Lee and Hiram came ambling back from the woods. Bobby Lee was dragging a yellow shirt with bright blue parrots in it.
Throw me that shirt, Bobby Lee, the misfit said. The shirt came flying at him and landed on his shoulder, and he put it on. The grandmother couldn't name what the shirt reminded her of. No, lady, the misfit said while he was buttoning it up. I found out the crime no matter. You can do one thing or you can do another, kill a man or take a tire off his car, because sooner or later you're going to forget what you done, and you be just punished for it.
The children's mother had begun to make heaving noises as if she couldn't get her breath.
Lady, he asked, would you and that little girl like to step up yonder with Bobby Lee and Hiram and join your husband?
Yes, thank you, the mother said faintly. Her left arm dangled helplessly, and she was holding the baby who had gone to sleep in the other.
Help that lady up, Hiram, the misfit said as she struggled to climb out of the ditch. And Bobby Lee, you hold on to that little girl's hand.
I don't want to hold hands with him, June Star said. He reminds me of a pig.
The
The
fat.
fat boy blushed and laughed and caught her by the arm and pulled her off into the woods after Hiram and her mother. Alone with the misfit, the grandmother found that she had lost her voice. There was not a cloud in the sky nor any sun. There was nothing around her but woods. She wanted to tell him that he must pray. She opened and closed her mouth several times before anything came out. Finally, she found herself saying, Jesus, Jesus, meaning Jesus will help you. But the way she was saying it, it sounded as if she might be cursing.
Yes'm, the misfit said, and he agreed. Jesus showed everything off balance. It was the same case of him as with the except he hadn't committed any crime, and they couldn't prove I had committed one because they had the papers on me, of course. He said, they never showed me my papers. That's why I signed myself now. I said long ago, you get you a signature and you sign everything and you do and keep a copy of it. Then you know what you've done and you can't hold up the crime to be punished and see do they match? And if the end, you'll have something to prove that you ain't been treated right. I call myself the misfit, he said, because I can't make what all I've done wrong fit what I've done gone through in punishment.
There was a piercing scream from the woods, followed closely by a pistol report.
Does it seem right to you, lady, that one is punished in a heap and another ain't punished at all?
Jesus, the old lady cried. You've got good blood. I know you wouldn't shoot a lady. I know you come from nice people. Pray. Jesus, you ought not to shoot a lady. I'll give you all the money I've got.
Lady, the mistress said, looking beyond her far into the woods, there never was a body that give the undertaker a tip.
There were two more pistol reports, and the grandmother raised her head like a parched old turkey hen, crying for water and called, Bailey boy, as if her heart would break.
Jesus was the only one that ever raised the dead, the misfit continued, and he shouldn't have done it. He's shown everything off balance. If he did what he said, then it's nothing for you to do but throw away everything and follow him. And if he didn't, then it's nothing for you to do but to enjoy the few minutes you got left the best way you can by killing somebody and burning down his house and doing some other meanness to him. No pleasure but meanness. And his voice had become almost snarled.
Maybe he didn't raise the dead, the old lady mumbled, not knowing what she was saying and feeling so dizzy that she sank down in the ditch with her legs twisted under her.
I wasn't there, so I can't say he didn't, the misfit said. I wish I hadn't been there, he said, hitting the ground with his fist. It ain't right I wasn't there, because if I had been there, I would have known. Listen, lady, he said in a high voice. If I had been there, I would have known and I would have been like I am now. His voice seems about to crack, and the grandmother's head cleared for an instant. She saw the man's face twisted close to her own, as if he was going to cry, and she murmured,
Why, you're one of my babies. You're one of my own children. She reached out and touched him on the shoulder. The misfit sprang back as if a snake had bitten him and shot her 3 times through the chest. Then he put his gun down on the ground and took off his glasses and began to clean them. Hiram and Bobby Lee returned from the woods and stood over the ditch, looking down at the grandmother, who half sat and half lay in a puddle of blood with her legs crossed under her like a child's, and her face smiling up at the cloudless sky. Without his glasses, the misfit's eyes were red-rimmed and pale and defenseless looking.
take her off and throw her where you shown the others, he said, picking up the cat that was rubbing itself against his leg. She was a talker, wasn't she? Bobby Lee said, sliding down to the ditch with a yodel. She would have been a good woman, the misfit said, if she hadn't been somebody there to shoot her every minute of her life. Some fun, Bobby Lee said. Shut up, Bobby Lee, the misfit said. Ain't no real pleasure in life.
The end.
Dun, dun.
I think we should repeat that last line because I want to make sure people understood it, which is what it's famous for, which is she would have been a good woman if it had been somebody there to shoot her every minute of her life. So why don't you start by talking about it, Fletcher, what that means to you?
Yeah, I mean, we have this whole sense of we would be good people if we had the right kind of guidance, right? There's always the thing that kind of says, we would be good if, right? We have this constant turmoil with ourselves and our faith, because sometimes when you don't want to accept responsibility for whatever sin you committed or anything that's kind of that you ain't supposed to do, if we use the southern vernacular, um, it starts to build up, right? And without that God's forgiveness, without the grace of Christ in your life, you pile that on, and before you know it, you feel like you ain't no good, right? You start to stack. You start to stack, like he said. You start to kind of figure out. You started writing down what you did wrong, and maybe what the world did wrong to you. Like you start seeing everything as unfair, right? The world is a terrible place for a lot of people, um, and the hope of Christ, as some would say it, it's easy when you had an easy life, but when you had a life that's not as stellar, when you were beaten as a child or something like that, when you've had a really really bad life considering the altercation or anything like that, you can see that God's grace seems very foreign, right? And the listening to it. And almost like the bishop said, if I was there, maybe I would be different if I saw it. But that's in the Bible. That's in the Bible when the Bible tells you, you know what? If I would see the holes, if I see him resurrected, then I'm going to believe in Christ. But the Bible says the opposite. It said, blessing them who have not seen and believe. And that's the quizzical thing about the Word of God in the Bible and us as Christian, is that we do have to see and seek faith in His face, and we do have a wonderful prayer that we always say to the Holy Face. Uh, it's like we seek His holy face, and we say like, let your enemies be scattered, let them who hate you flee. Uh, and as we seek your face, right? Because we have to. It's almost like a battle. So the misfit and the grandmother, you could say, is they're in you. I wouldn't say it's a far fetched thing to believe that, because inside of us, we always have. Paul said we wrestle with the flesh daily, meaning inside our spirit we want to praise God because the spirit always wants to praise God. But the flesh is weak. In other words, the flesh, excuse me, the flesh just wants to go play video games, trash talk our friends and neighbors, because they did wrong, and basically not do anything that's going to benefit your soul, not repent of that thing that you felt, that was wrong, not go tell somebody, you're sorry, you didn't really mean what you said in those hurtful words. Not going to, you tell your loved ones you love them. That takes a little bit of effort, right? So I think that's the dualities in the story that we see, and I think it's beautifully written, and it shows you a little bit of deep theology in a very, some would say, um, grotesque manner, right? I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that line is pretty profound. I think what the Misfits saying is that I think the story in general is talking about being good versus bad. I remember Jesus saying when someone says, "Oh, you're good," and he says, "No one is good." I don't think he was saying he wasn't good. I think he was saying, you see what in front of you is just seemingly a man,
Right.
and you call me good, but only God is good, and you don't see that. You call people good when in fact I think the misfit even says, "No, I'm not a good man, ma'am." So I won't take that vanity that people always call each other, "Oh, he's so good, she's good," when in fact we all have these struggles within our souls. I think when he says she would have been a good woman if it had been somebody there to shoot her, every minute of her life is that she became much more holy and loving at the end when she was facing the gun, when this man, this misfit, was going to kill her. She started to see him as her own child. She became like a saint in that moment. And it's almost like we need some kind of, emergency or trauma to be our best selves. And that's why I think he's saying that. Like if she had just had somebody, you know, to kind of threaten her and make her her best self, as opposed to being the kind of petty person that she was before, and the whole family was, right? They were unkind to each other. They weren't very nice. She was lying to the family about even where they were going. She caused the whole accident, bringing the cat, etc. She would have been a better person.
Right.
And so I think that's very rich. I think the ironies of this story are really interesting, because if she hadn't brought the cat, they wouldn't have had this happen. If they had not gone to Florida,
down
like
the road.
she said she didn't want to go to Florida. She read about the misfit. There's a lot of foreshadowing in this story.
Right.
But they still may not have met him if she didn't want to reclaim the old slavery days that she was longing for, when she had everything, when she said, there was these nice, goods, and then Sherman came, General Sherman, the story's referring to, who was one of the generals in the Civil War. And, so she's longing for this time when maybe she would, have been happier, because she would have had higher means, like she was talking about, like in the old days with being courted, and she could have married this other man who brought the watermelons and was very wealthy.
Right.
It's like she has a lot of regrets, and she wants the past. She wants the slave plantation past, where they had nice china before, General Sherman came down from the Union Army and then took everything from the Confederates. And the story is kind of criticizing that, not because it's taking a side, I think, in the war. I don't know if Flannery O'Connor would have done that, but I think because of her desire to live outside of time. She doesn't want to just, be happy where she is. She wants to, kind of live in the past.
No, completely. I do feel that there's such a richness to it, and I know a lot of people, they don't kind of appreciate it. They feel it's a little bit too dark, right? Uh, but you may not realize, but people like Quentin Tarantino were completely. You can see the writing of Tarantino. It's heavily influenced by Flannery O'Connor, because you have that twist, um, basically surprise to it. You do have that, uh, things go south completely, right away, and it's no pun about them being in the south, but yeah. Uh, but you see that buildup. I mean, if you watch any of the stuff today that has that kind of like, whoa, it kind of went south real quick. This is where they got it from, and it's so rich, and the story has so much into it, so many things. A lot of people that don't understand it, I think you have to just sit with it, and you have to picture everything that she's saying, because you can't. She's so vivid in the writing and the descriptions that it flies off the page. At least to me. To me, it might not be for everybody, but to me, it is. It is very fascinating, and a great piece of art.
And I think it deserves mentioning that, as a person of color, she does mention, I didn't say the N word because I didn't want to offend our audience. So I said Negro, which for some people may still be offensive, but not to me. It was the term that Blacks used for themselves in this country very self-voluntarily for many years before that was considered no good. In fact, it's still the name for the NAACP that stands for the Negro, achievement, or the Negro advancement of the, national advancement of colored peoples.
Right.
And there's the Negro College Fund. I think that's what I was referring to at first. I think that Flannery O'Connor was, as you can tell, and you can see Fletcher, who's not from the South, I know he spent some time there, struggling with some of the language, but she wrote, I think, in the language of the people that she was talking about. and that's the way they would have spoken. I don't think that O'Connor herself ever used the N word. I think there may have been some letter someone found that she was joking around with a girlfriend of hers, but I don't think that was anything other than showmanship with each other, playing around. I don't think, from what everything I've seen of her, she was very respectful to all people. As we mentioned, she was Catholic, and that is a very important Catholic value, that we do show respect to other people. We don't use, we don't call them names. Jesus said, if you call even, someone you don't like a fool, right, without cause or even with cause, but just being mean, you're in danger of hellfire, right? You gotta be careful with your words. I don't think that she, who was a very, honestly known to be a very good Catholic, um, and prayed every day, apparently went to church every day, would, very maliciously do that. But I do think that in the time frame in which she's writing, she wanted to show how people said that word, and
Right.
how the grandmother would not have said, nor the family, black, that wasn't even something you said then. African American had never come out yet. They would have said colored, or they might have said the N word. And they, I don't know that this family meant it in a malicious way, but it was the way it was used. So some people have tried to cancel her because of this, and because of the fact that in some private letters, I think she made these jokes. I want to show her a little bit more grace than that. What do you think, Fletcher?
No, I agree because she was friends with a famous poet at the time, a famous black poet at the time, James Baldwin, and it's kind of like if he didn't think that's was her deal, then I don't see him wanting to meet because he's a very open man, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that they were friends, but I definitely think that you're right. I know what you're referring to. We both have read about that, and I think that he admired her, and they think they may have corresponded. I'm not sure, but yeah, I think you're right. I think that James Baldwin, who was a civil rights leader, a black civil rights leader, wouldn't have wanted to meet her if he thought of her as a raging racist. That's a really good point.
No, yeah, completely. And would you want to say hi to our lady Jen is in the house? She said, "Hey, can
Hello.
we?"
Thank
And
you for joining us.
no, thank you. Yeah, something a little bit different, a little bit rock and roll. Jen said I was looking at Flannery and her thoughts on Gone with the Wind. Yeah, she disliked the romanticism. Uh, well, she disliked how Gone with the Wind romanticized the South, right? She couldn't stand it. And she was very miffed or disliked the depiction of Scarlett O'Hara. If you guys have watched Scarlett O'Hara, she's kind of like the heroine, I guess, of the movie. I myself am not a big Gone with the Wind, aficionado. Uh, but for my understanding, Gone with the Wind is still the most successful movie and like that made the most money in like the world supposedly. Like when they have like if you adjust for inflation, Avatar, Titanic, and stuff. My understanding is that Gone with the Wind still beats them all. Um,
Well, Flannery O'Connor did write a story that involves a character going to the premiere of the movie Gone with the Wind, which I think did take place during her lifetime. And that story, which I would recommend to Lady Jen, is a late encounter with the enemy. And it's a very fun story. I read it in anticipation of our doing this, and I've trying to read more of her work, and it's really interesting. So I think you're right. She didn't seem to like it too much. She was very picky, I think, about writing, because it sounds to me like she was a really true artist.
yeah, and that's one thing. A lot of people don't. Um, they kind of can't see almost like the forest for the trees kind of thing, where you have this. You stop when you see the N word, right? And if you've never lived in the South and you haven't had that connection and the history of it, um, I can live being somebody who didn't speak English that much when we worked in the South with our family. I can tell you it's a hair raising experience, because my father, being white, as they would call it or whatever, um, he would get approving looks, but as soon as he opened his mouth, his accent was really, really heavy, and his English was very poor. You could see the faces kind of turn when he would speak. So it's a little bit it was a little bit concerning. Uh, but it is a bit of a mystical place. It does have, I think, of out of all the places in the United States, the places that I would think are like fantasy or witches or something like that take place, the South would be it. It has a little bit of macabre to it. That's why, like, if you want something interesting to watch, that probably is, and we'll do something about it one day. It's a very artistic film. It's called Daughters of the Dust, which focuses on the Gullah tribe, the Gullah Geechee, which is basically they were uh, a island off of Georgia. No, it's not. It's not Georgia. It's Carolina, I believe, right? Um, and they do have this African mysticism, that protrudes it, and it's like a black island. They used to make indigo and all kinds of things there, and a lot of them escaped the plantations and stuff like that. So there's a lot of richness to it, and anybody who ever been that area, you should go to this plantation tours. They are eye opening, but yeah, I mean it's a crazy history the United States has. Um, but Curtis Shabby is also in the house. It says, about to get back to work. Have a great stream. Thank you so much, Mr. Shelby. We really appreciate you.
Curtis Selby, thank you. Really
Yes.
appreciate your coming by.
Yeah, and definitely, hey, if you guys want something to check out, I think his show, The Voice of Oklahoma, um, is doing really well, but he's looking for more subscribers and a little bit more listeners. So if you could maybe go to his channel and give him a few listens, that'll be great. And we got Sir David Klein in the house. Sorry I'm late. Oh, you're never right. A wizard always comes on time.
A wizard is never late.
A wizard is never late.
Well, Sir Glenn, you did miss a reading of a short story by the inimitable Flannery O'Connor, who's celebrating her 100th birthday this week. If she were alive, she was a amazing author, American Southern author who's also Catholic. She wrote an interesting story that we just read. Hopefully you can play that back and hear it maybe before you go to bed at night and have nightmares, because it's
It's not the best, but I did want to say
no, it is the best. It's just that
I'm
it's
just
not,
saying no, it's not for sleeping.
I think I would read it before sleep. We want to hear what you think.
No, definitely, please. I did want to, since so we are trying to honor her. I did catch this from, I think it's the Georgia History site. So if you go to georgiahistory.com, they do have a Flannery O'Connor thing. I like this little picture of her, and they do kind of show some of her haunts, as should we say it. She grew up, so Flannery O'Connor from 1925 to 1964. She grew up in Savannah, so Savannah, Georgia. Was born in March 25 in 1925. She was born at St. Joseph Hospital in Savannah, Georgia. Her parents were Reginald and Edward O'Connor. Flannery had a wealthy cousin named Katie Smeens. Is that how you spell that?
I think I would say Semmes, maybe.
Semmons. Wow,
Semmes.
I was far off.
Sems or Semmes, yeah.
Yeah. Katie's father was Captain John Flannery. He left Katie $1 million when he died. That's a lot of money. Cousin Katie helped Flannery parents buy a house, 207 Charleston Street in Lafayette Square. So if you see it right there in the corner, that's Flannery O'Connor's childhood home in Savannah, and you can visit. They were pretty good at keeping a lot of her things. Flannery and her family were Irish Catholics. There were a lot of Irish Catholics families living in her neighborhood. The Cathedral of St. John the Baptist was right across Flannery's house. Flannery's Catholic faith was very important to her. Flannery was an only child. She got a lot of attention from both her mother and father and extended family. Flannery had a unique personality and interesting hobbies. One of her hobbies was raising birds. She taught one of her chickens to walk backwards, and that got her basically acclaim. And I thought it'd be fun if we could check that out. So this is that. So let's see if you can see it.
And it says, here's an odd fowl that walks backward to go forward so she can look behind to see where she went.
There you go. It's back in the days when you didn't have the.
Here's Mary O'Connor of Savannah, Georgia, holding the only chicken in the world that actually walks backwards. When she advances, she retreats. To go forward, she goes back. When she looks ahead, she's going astern. And when she arrives, she's really leaving.
How cool is that? She taught this chicken how to so she was an interesting child to begin with. She taught her chicken how to walk backwards.
Which is hilarious. That is so funny.
You can see the imagination already, right?
Yeah, and it actually fits her stories because as we read with the one we just read of hers, it's the exact opposite of what you expect. When you hear the title, A Good Man is Hard to Find, you think you're going to maybe find a good man. And then you find this, we're not going to give it away for Sir Glenn, who's going to watch it tonight from us, or else pick up a copy because it's on the internet now. It's free in the public domain. But you get something different than what you expect, just as you do. And also the kind of grotesqueness of a chicken walking backwards, kind of like what the stories are like, which is pretty interesting. I bet you the chicken could also moonwalk, although I don't know, he predates Michael Jackson by a bit.
Well, you know, Michael Jackson, people do say he's he's a time traveler, so maybe he. Who knows? Did the chicken teach Michael Jackson?
Started out, he found he could make them all do it.
What?
Look at this duck. She won't let any chicken call a foul on her.
There you go.
And good old Bossy. This must be what folks mean when they talk about going back on the farm. Even the old gray mare that ain't what she used to be gets the notion. Naturally, with autos ready to bump them in the rear, they're backward about coming forward. Such grace. Just like a canal boat. Well, all's well.
How funny is that? I mean, I think there was a little bit of trickery.
Well, the other one, I think, is the cameraman playing games. But honestly, it was the chicken that I read about also that she had personally trained to do that. And that was legit. That wasn't trickery. That her chicken could do that. And I guess they called her Mary O'Connor. But when she started to write, she started to use her middle name, which was Flannery.
Right. Yeah, so Flannery liked to read, write, and draw. When she was a girl, she often wrote stories and drew illustrations about a family of ducks that traveled the world. She also wrote funny descriptions of her family members. Not everyone was happy with the way she described them. Her father thought they were wonderful. He had descriptions printed in a book. Flannery's father loved her very much and enjoyed his stories and drawing. During play dates, Flannery would make her friends read stories out loud. She also liked listening to the radio programs, Let's Pretend with her friends and cousins Saturday morning. Mostly Flannery liked to spend time alone reading, writing, and drawing. Flannery attended private Catholic school where she was in Savannah. She could walk with her friends to school when she attended school miles away. Her mother drove her cousin Katie electric car. Yeah, back in the days, folks, there was electric cars. And here's a picture of one of
That's
the.
That's amazing. Really? I never heard that before.
Yeah, so people are like, Tesla did not invent the electric car. This is the early 1900s. So
that's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Wow.
But the fact that we don't have like steam cars, I still don't get that. But so during the time of the Great Depression, they also moved. But if you go to the Georgia history, it is this beautiful kind of summary flag. She had a fascination with peacocks also. You can see there. This is her room. It's a great read. Put a link to it in the description box below later on if you guys want to check it out. Um, but she did love writing short stories. Um, that was her forte. But she also liked to read a lot. It has some of her favorite stories of like what she liked to read, and they also give you, if you want to know more, they have great websites where you can check it out, and that is at georgiahistory.com, and they'll have a Flannery O'Connor. If you want to know more about her, which is, yeah, it's, I think it'd be cool to check out because she was a very cool lady, and we uh, we did want to honor her on her 100th, I would say 100th anniversary of, she would have been 100 if
Of
she
her
lived
birth, yeah.
on her birth. Yeah. Um, but yeah, that was on that. We did want to touch on, since we've been kind of gone for a little bit, and we had some stuff that we wanted to share with y'all. And then we wanted to talk about certain things that we find are in a way irking us about, being Catholics. There's been a lot of mysticism about the Catholic Church that I think a lot of people are using uh, almost to a detriment, like, like where some kind of like weird um, cult or something, which is very unusual since been around for thousands of years. So it's
Well,
unusual.
2000
Yeah,
for sure.
2000 for sure. So it's almost like, what are you guys even talking about? So we did want to talk about a little bit that also coming up. If you guys still want to hang out with us, thank you so much for everyone who is hanging out with us. Um, we got over 12 people. We are on YouTube. We are on the X, and we're also streaming on the Rumble, the big green machine. And we really appreciate everyone that is checking us out. If you could share the stream if you would like, and if you haven't subscribed, we ask you if you could please subscribe. That would
And
really
please
help
like us. That would help us as well. Please like.
Like, if you're catching this on a replay, if you leave us a comment, that also helps with the algorithms. And but we did want to talk about how things are getting a little bit kind of crazy, right? And excuse me. Let me share this story with y'all. Great, now I got the southern thing because
Y'all.
you read Flannery O'Connor, so now I got to talk to y'all, them.
Speaking of Flannery O'Connor and bad guys, we have this
Right?
judge. I think she'd be a perfect character for O'Connor because, as you see here, it says that Obama judge orders Trump administration to return alleged MS-13 gang member to the U.S. after he was deported to El Salvador's notorious, I guess, CCOT prison.
Yeah.
And yeah.
So I guess this happened. Federal judge on Friday ordered the Trump administration to return an alleged MS-13 gang member to the United States. Now, mind you, I don't think this says it, but he's an illegal alien, so he's here illegally.
And he's a member of what has been designated, I believe now, a terrorist organization, which they deserve to be. Because MS-13, if you haven't heard of it, it took me a while to hear about it, is a really nasty gang that I believe may originate from El Salvador. Is that right?
Yeah, so it has, I believe it originated in Salvador, but it has like branches, my understanding of it. But yes, yeah.
And so you have someone who, under President Trump's executive order, should just be gotten rid of. He said he's invoking the Alien Enemies Act. He also, by executive order, said this gang, I believe he included this gang, is a terrorist organization. Terrorists are enemies. They are alien enemies. In this case, he's not a citizen of the United States. And so he got deported. But it is incredibly cheeky of a judge to say, as this one, Judge Paula Zenas, that you have to bring the person back. He's already back in El Salvador. He is an El Salvadorian citizen, and he's in prison there. So exactly what do you intend then for the Trump administration to do, Judge? Call up Bukelele and say you have this loudmouth judge with an ego as big as her mouth saying, bring this guy back. I know he's one of your citizens and you put him in prison, but she wants him to bring back to the United States.
Well, the funny thing is she's saying this was an illegal act. How's it an illegal act to deport an illegal immigrant? Right.
But even if it was illegal, how do you remedy that? You can't bring him back. He's in another country and he's subject to their jurisdiction. She doesn't have the ability to order another country to do something.
How she's going to extradite a citizen of a criminal citizen of that country's jail,
who's already in their prison. And
people are saying we should just buy her a ticket and have her go down there.
Yeah, go get him yourself.
Go get her himself. That's the thing.
I mean, what do you expect? Who do you think you are? You know, these orders are so outrageous when you hear them do something this dumb. I mean, he's the wrong person for her to be standing behind. This is not an honorable person, as you're showing here with Carolyn Levitt shutting down the hoax that he was some great guy, that he was a father.
Let's listen to her.
Okay.
First of all, the error that you are referring to was a clerical error. It was an administrative error. The administration maintains the position that this individual who was deported to El Salvador and will not be returning to our country was a member of the brutal and vicious MS-13 gang. That is fact number one. Fact number two, we also have credible intelligence proving that this individual was involved in human trafficking. And fact number three, this individual was a member, actually a leader of the brutal MS-13 gang, which this president has designated as a foreign terrorist organization. Fact number four is that foreign terrorists do not have legal protections in the United States of America anymore. And it is within the president's executive authority and power to deport these heinous individuals from American communities. It is a promise he campaigned on. It is a promise he is keeping. And every single person in this room should be grateful for that, considering especially MS-13 is very prevalent and prominent here in the District of Columbia, in Maryland, and in Virginia. And the president, the attorney general, everyone who has been involved in these operations is focused on eradicating these criminals and terrorists from our communities.
Boom.
She's not wrong, because they are some of the, if you read about the MS-13, I'm always shocked and horrified by the kinds of crimes they commit. They're really brutal. They're horrible. They are indiscriminate. And I think it's great. At first I thought it was, kind of novel. I mean, he was making a gang, a terrorist organization, but he's not, Trump is not wrong with that, because they are not homegrown. It's not like the Jets and the Sharks, you guys. I think that's what these judges think is like West Side Story. Like they're still living in a world of like the Jets and the Sharks. One's from Puerto Rico, one's from New York. No, they're not dancing and keeping a syncopated tune to Bob Fosse, Judge Zini, right? These are violently organized criminals from a different country who come here to prey upon our citizenry, to traffic, to do racketeering, to do also violent crimes. And, are you kidding me? This is the wrong cause. But I like how Sir Glenn says Judge Zanis orders the country of Greece to change its name to olive oil. That's exactly this. You know what? That would make more sense, Sir Glenn. That would actually make more sense than what she's ordered. I mean, I order the country of Greece to change its name to olive oil. I order the country of El Salvador to return one of his violent criminals that that he's a citizen of the country, and take him out of prison and bring him here. It's the same. It's equal.
Has he?
It's
He
equal in
probably
absurdity.
committed crimes in El Salvador too.
Oh, I'm sure. That's why he's in prison there.
You know what would be funny? Is she going to go to El Salvador and be like, I'm a judge in El Salvador now? I mean, what is this lady?
No, Fletcher, you're right. And the fact is, I think I read that the reason. So it's one thing to deport him. He's not. Just let's be clear. He's not in prison in El Salvador for violating our laws.
Right.
Okay. El Salvador is not saying, hey, you violated the laws of the United States. We're going to put you in prison here. No, no, no. He's wanted in El Salvador for his own violations. I think they said he may have committed a murder there. They already had him on the list to put in prison. He's in prison for that. So we said we don't want him here. He has no right to be here. He's an illegal alien, but more importantly, he is a foreign terrorist by designation, which the president, I understand, can do under his Article 2 powers. And this judge says, oh, no, no, bring the murderer back here. But as we're, I think, making fun of her rightfully, it's also moot because he's in another country. And I mean, it doesn't make sense for a judge to make an order that she knows to be moot, right? I mean, that sounds insane to me. You're saying, go jump in that lake and retrieve. What are you talking about? Like, that's obviously dumb. I mean, come up with something better.
Right. I mean, you do have to understand that I don't know what she's reading into the law of this and what she's supposed to do, but you know what?
Hold up. Wait a minute. Something ain't right.
She is not.
You got to read Sir Glenn's comment, because I'm sorry, he gets the Monty Python nature of this judge's ruling.
Oh, and if it passes on, it gets reincarnated. He was asked to do another life sentence.
That's what she's ordering next.
Yeah.
She's ordering next.
I'm ordering the soul of the deceased to serve time, and not only that, I want him to work. You know?
Listen, I do believe this is the kind of thing that if Saturday Night Live would actually get their act together and make funny jokes, this is the kind of this rich material here.
They would finally start making, people will actually start watching them. This would be the skit. You have her, you know, she's like, you know, I order the ghost of
I order the
General
ghost
Lee because he was a racist
to come back.
Yeah, to come back
and stand trial.
Stand trial for his racist act, and I want him to work. You know, it's like, what are you even talking about, you crazy necromancer?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, yeah, I don't know. Has it been that long? It's 1992. Wow.
Yeah, SNL has not been good for a while. I mean, they, you know, you might chuckle when you see some of the jokes, but since they take so many pot shots at the right, they're not being, it should be equal opportunity. That's much more funny. And some of the jokes are because they're personally traumatized by the Trump administration, as opposed to just making fun of things that are, there's certainly a lot there to make fun of as well, but they don't. I mean, it seems like they're just playing out their own traumas over and over again. And that's just not funny.
It's like a struggle session live
on television. Yeah. You know what was funny though, Fletcher, when Trump got back in office, I guess it was when he was elected back in November, that, or, you know, maybe that was when they did it. It was quite funny when they started the cold open with the people from the cast coming out kind of as themselves, saying, you know, I know you think that we don't like you, but we really do, because they're making jokes of the idea that so-called Trump was going after his enemies. You know what? I thought that was kind of funny. It was kind of a funny, I mean, it went on too long, as they often do now, and it still was a little tone deaf in some parts, because again, they went too far in the idea that, like, you know, he's, you know, this tyrant. But it would have been funny if they just said, you know, as they kept it there, you know, which has started to be a little, I did chuckle a little bit, but most of the time it's just not worth it.
No, it's been crazy. But another thing that's been crazy that people aren't talking about, you know, a lot of people were talking about the stock market and all this kind of stuff on tariffs and stuff. But why is nobody talking about all this money that we have no clue where all this money's going, right? Why shouldn't the people that are so-called worried about everything raising on tariffs actually be like talking about this? Because that's money that hypothetically, like, I mean, we could talk about tariffs, but what is all this money that we don't even know? And we know for a fact that people are scamming the U.S. government. This is your money, folks. You know?
Yeah, I think it's so interesting that we are learning. I think people have often and always suspected the government was extremely inefficient and also corrupt and also, you know, bleeding money. But with Doge, one thing that's been interesting is to see specifically, you know, substantiating what we thought already. And here, this article says that there are, as people have been saying, and then leftists will say, what evidence do you have that illegals are getting free money here? They're just poor. They just arrive here on our shores, the huddled masses yearning to be free. But in fact, we're finding out, as we already knew, that they are accessing welfare. And in this case, Medicaid. This executive of Doge, Antonio Gracias, says that Gracias reveals 1.3 million illegals, as they say, or undocumented people, are accessing Medicaid, and thousands are voting.
Right, and let's just understand, this was just revealed. In other words, the sum. I believe Elon Musk commented on this on X. That was just kind of like the initial amount that they have seen. That was like, in other words, it's a bit of like the tip of the iceberg. This is just what they think is there. Meaning, it's a much higher. It's a much higher amount.
I think so too. I think we all know there's a much higher amount, and that people were already lying, saying, "Oh, the immigrants, they're not, the migrants, they're here, they're not getting anything." But then people have anecdotally said that they see the kind of clothes they wear, the kind of, you know, groceries they're buying, that they have these cards in which it's charged up with thousands. Literally, people have taken photographs at the supermarket, thousands of dollars.
7,000.
Yeah, money that, you know, you and I struggle to put food on the table for our families, but they're coming in here illegally in many cases, or under programs that should be illegal, and, you know, getting thousands of dollars, you know, on us. And then on top of it, accessing things that are really for poor people of our own country. Medicaid, right?
Medicaid,
it's not for
it's not
people
for
from, we're not the world's ATM. I'm sorry. And we want to, I think a lot of people want to help. Catholic people have a very strong desire to help, but we don't want to we don't want you picking in our pocket from the government. You know, we are happy to help people, but you know what? Stay in your own country and get that help. Make your country better, because if you are all going to come here, there will be no here left.
No, completely.
Okay. And so the idea that what you're trying to get from here is going to, you know, make it that we can't do it at all. So why don't you stay where you are? Let us help you. Only have it be for those who desperately need to come, and not come here without going through the proper channels. Don't come illegally. But then you have these people coming illegally and still getting Medicaid. And as this article points out, actually being found to vote. And they have no right to do that. I think that leftists, you know, claim that doesn't happen. We have seen evidence that it happens. You and I, Fletcher, talked about it months ago, about a Chinese national who was caught voting. And people think that's isolated. It's only isolated because he outed himself. He came back and tried to take back the vote. I guess he may have done it. I don't know if he lost his
that's
nerve.
The only reason we found out.
Yeah, but we know this is happening, and this one here is documenting it, but I don't think we can fully document it. But
yeah, it's like Sir Glenn says, it's like leaving the faucet running on the fridge door, but
yeah, there's no way.
The stuff running out, and
it bugs me that there's these people, bleeding heart liberals, but also some of them Catholics, who, by the way, may not pay their tithes, may not pay anything into the church basket, but are saying, yeah, take our money, let everybody come here. And it's like, wait a minute, you don't really, we actually do help people from other countries. We do give money, and the church should be doing that and not looking for a handout from the government either. I was happy that the United States bishops basically got slapped down, from what I understand, from suing Trump because he wanted to stop some of the USAID, and they got some of that money to so-called, you know, help the refugees. I think it helped a lot of people with their pet projects, and maybe help themselves to some little cash as well. I don't know. I'm not maligning anyone, but I don't think it's appropriate. The church should be pretty much self-sufficient. We shouldn't be looking to government. We should look to our parishioners, the people who are in the church, to support it. And we should help the poor. God can provide. we should be giving. That's what the tithes are for, okay, for the people in the church, but also to help others. Like the church should absolutely be feeding the poor, helping the person who's foreign, all of that. But the government should not be picking our pockets to do so. And
No,
definitely
completely.
people shouldn't be sneaking over here. I mean, there should be very little of it. You know, if somebody really were under attack from their government, okay, you know, we're compassionate. But why did you have to, as we said before, Fletcher, skip 20 countries to come
No,
over
right.
here to safely leave your government? Most of these people are not asylum seekers. If they are, they're mostly liars. That's a fact. The studies have been shown that most of these stories are fabricated, and people are helping them fabricate.
No,
It's
completely.
not that
There's
many
people being
problems. They're here for, you know, money reasons. They want more money.
completely, and there's people, you know, they were paid by this USAID people to, I mean, we're not talking out of our butts here. We actually know some of these folks that get paid to help what to say. You know, I mean, if you go to the UK and you think all the immigrants are saying, "Oh, I'm actually gay, and if I go back to my country, I'll be killed," you know, good and well that guy's not gay.
Exactly.
So, I mean, these are the things they're trying to say, but let's listen to what he's saying and then talk about it, right?
We mapped it through to the benefit programs. We found in the benefit programs that every benefit program we looked at was being accessed by these people. You know, 1.3 million of them are on Medicaid right now, today. And by the way, it's just ramping. It's just starting.
That's like today, right? Like, I mean, like, so the stuff that they access, which is, you know, they're trying to limit what they access, right? In Doge, and that's the amount that they just plopped out. That's just as rapid. In other words, in our initial investigation, folks, if that doesn't boil your blood, I don't know what will.
Yeah,
Just give
no,
you a
it
point.
does.
And then out of curiosity, I woke up at night like 2 a.m. I couldn't sleep. My mind was right on this. I sent the engineers a note saying, "Hey guys, let's just look at the public voter rolls, see what we find in some friendly states." And we looked at the voter rolls and we found that thousands of them were registered to vote in a handful of states. And then we went into further with those friendly states and found that many of those people had actually voted. It was shocking to us. And if I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, I wouldn't have believed it. And so now the question we're asking ourselves is, what do we do? We referred some to prosecution. That's ongoing right now. You know, we're thinking through how to do it. And the reality is they have various kinds of status, and it's a very detailed analysis legally that we're working through right now about how to deal with it.
So thousands of those people registered to vote.
Yes.
In the election.
Which is a federal crime, by the way.
Well, yeah. I mean, the interesting thing is, like, the Heritage Foundation has a very good project, you know, it's obviously right-leaning, where they're studying all cases of fraud. I looked at it before we were here. There's only been 24 cases since 2003 of somebody who's a non-citizen trying to vote. Now, those are people caught. So this would be incredibly dramatic if it was even 1,000 people.
Right. I mean, this whole thing is a shock to the system, right? Because remember, they kept telling us that, you know, illegal aliens aren't voting, right?
Right. Yeah. It's just, you know, the fevered imagination of maggots.
Maggots.
Yeah, but that's not the case. And we know that they're voting. We just know it. We knew it already. That's the reason that the leftists want them here. And they're not liberals. I got to stop saying that, because liberal people are open-minded. You know, the liberal ideas, like liberal thinking. I think I'm a liberal in that sense. Of course, you would say so, Fletcher, since you're a right-wing reactionary.
Yeah,
but
I was a commie.
But these are I'm not a commie, but these are leftists, because they want these people to be able to influence elections, because their ideas are not tractable here. People don't want their ideas. People don't want trans in sports. People don't want, you know, a welfare economy. People don't want all of the, you know, third world here, you know, and a lot of other things, right? People want more, you know, common sense factors. In fact, Trump is not really that even right wing, honestly. He's more moderate than anything. Yeah. And so they've been lying all this time. Oh, no, they're not voting. They're not voting. But in fact, they know they are. And they are trying to get them to vote. And with these policies in states where you don't have to show ID, you don't have to show that you're a citizen. You don't have to show you even live here. You don't have to say your name. You can just show up. Yeah, of course, you know, people are voting. They know it's in their best interest if they are not going to get caught. And they're in states where nobody cares, and in fact are encouraging them. Because when you go to the DMV, I see people being registered to vote, and a lot of people going to the DMV are not citizens. They're people driving. They're not citizens. They can get driver's licenses in many of these blue states without being a citizen and without having papers. And so they're saying, oh, yeah, sign here, sign here. So we knew they were voting, but this just documents what people already suspected and in greater number than what people were able to say before.
Yeah, and that's what, they're pushing, right? I mean, they're pushing this whole no voter ID, and this is, I think today they were talking about this, and I was shared. So this is Sunny Hostin. She's I guess she's one of the members of that horrible show, The View, right? And it's like this whole. I guess these are the counties with
Countries.
countries with voter ID. So all the countries that have voter ID, then a lot of these are should we say countries of color? I mean, if
Well, let's
they're
read them.
stupid
I'm
thing.
going to read these. So she makes the absurd claim that that she said poor people, minorities, elderly can't get ID. All of that are lies. Everybody can get ID. And in fact, minorities need ID for the same things all regular white people need IDs for, to identify themselves, for their jobs, for the hospital, which always asks for your ID, for welfare programs, whatever it is. They all require
the reason
ID.
Democrats don't want voter.
Let's hear to what she says.
The reason.
Yeah.
The reason Democrats don't want voter ID is because they make it much more difficult for elderly people, people that don't travel, don't have a passport, poor people.
Mm-hmm. It's always the they have these talking points, right? Isn't that like you were just basically saying that?
Yeah, like I said, I don't have to even hear her. I know that. And by the way, you don't need a passport to vote. You don't need a passport for ID. In fact, passports are not the common go-to for people with ID. It's usually right. It's going to be maybe your school ID, driver's license. In some states, you can even use your hunting license. You just need something with your name that they can tell it's you, your birth certificate, social security card. Any of these things are ways in which we could have voter ID. You don't have to have a passport.
But they're the go-to. It's always like the poor people. We're idiots or something.
Don't have cars, don't have driver's licenses. So it's sort of a vestige of, I think, post-slavery laws where
it's always, you always go back to these kind of things.
And she's so disgusting too, because if you've ever read about post-slavery laws, I have. She's completely absurd to say that they are equivalent in any fashion, form, or way whatsoever, because first of all, even slaves had ways to identify themselves. They had cards when they went to vote after Reconstruction, after the Civil War. And although some blacks actually were able to vote before then, there were free men, free blacks in a lot of states. You can read the history about that. Anybody wants to know, maybe we can do a story on that. I can give you guys the books and history that I've been reading. And with my kids, our kids, I can tell you that blacks were voting before the Civil War, but even after that, when more of them were, when they went to the polls, they had ID. There wasn't a question of they had to show who they were to vote. So that's nonsense. They had voting, ways to show who they were even back then. But more importantly, they're not equivalent, because what they would do, Fletcher, I don't know if you even read this, but they would say things like, oh, you want to vote? Tell me how many. You have to answer some questions first.
Right.
And the questions would be, tell me how many bubbles are in a bar of soap. You can document this. These are written places. You can read the history. In fact, one of the books is called Traveling Black. I think it's a historian at Harvard who documents this, that these were some of the questions. They would ask nonsense questions of Black would-be voters to say, oh, well, you can't vote. They would sometimes also say, well, prove that your grandfather was able to vote, or prove that your grandfather owned land, or some things like this, to stop them from voting, which was no longer a rule. Okay, they would let white people come and vote with just themselves, but then black citizens would come. So for her to say these are like post-slavery laws, it's such an insult to the people who really did try to be good citizens and wanted to vote and were treated so horribly. When we're saying everyone, regardless of your color, race, or background, or whether your granddaddy owned land, or if you know the answer to how many bubbles are, are in a bar of soap, should just show who they are when they come to vote. It's enough that she should be dragged off. That's such a terrible thing for her to say.
Well, she's got more to say. Let's see. Maybe she corrects it after this sentence. That was an outrageous sentence.
Where black people had to prove their right to vote, and oftentimes they couldn't vote because they couldn't pass some crazy test, or they didn't have the appropriate ID. It also affects women that are married. Maybe your passport reflects something that's different on your birth certificate or on your driver's license. So
she's so stupid. She's so stupid. First of all, no one's using their passport to vote. You're not required to show citizenship. You're required to show who you are. You do have to be a citizen to vote, and that's why they have voting rolls. You have to register to vote as a citizen, but when you go to the voting rolls, you don't have to do that. You can just have shown at your birth certificate or whatever, your social security number, whatever it is, to show that you were born in the United States or naturalized, right? Your papers that way would work as well. But when you go to vote, no one has to show a passport. So she needs to stop with that. As far as women being able to vote with their maiden names, I think we've settled this over, 100 years now.
What?
I mean, women have been voting since the 1920s, I believe.
No.
And they have for a long time taken their husband's names in marriage. I don't think it's difficult, or they don't have the same name. All you need to have is ID showing your name. And guess what? If you are a woman and you have a difficult time being able to show who you are, then maybe you shouldn't be voting. What? I mean, if it's so difficult for you to get, change your name. I changed my name. Most women do, or have a hyphenated name. But the fact is, they don't even hold you to that. If you're able to show if you go to the voting rolls and you've changed your name since you last voted, and you're married, it's the most common situation. They literally accommodate that. I mean, yeah. I think it even happened for me when you first get married and you haven't changed all your papers over, and you go vote and you show, here's my marriage license. I got married last month. Here's my ID with my old name. Here's my, marriage certificate. They let you vote. What? That's not an issue. That's such a non-issue.
No, you're just crazy. She's right. Let's see.
So really the bottom line is voter suppression. And I agree with him 100%. It's a brilliant notion that less voter ID laws allows more people to vote. And most democracies do it that way. We're the only ones that really don't do it that way.
Right. I mean, I think it's been...
Okay, you got to stop it there, Fletcher, and let's look at the chart. So she says most democracies don't have voter ID. Let's look at the countries, and I will read them for emphasis, that do have voter ID that are known to be democracies: Iceland, Sweden, New Zealand, Denmark, Canada, Ireland, Switzerland, Finland, Australia, Luxembourg, Netherlands, Germany, Austria, Malta, UK, Spain, Mauritius, Uruguay, Japan, Italy, France, South Korea, Costa Rica, Botswana, Portugal, Estonia, Israel, Czech Republic, India, Taiwan, Chile, Belgium, Cyprus, Slovenia, Lithuania, South Africa, Jamaica, Latvia, Slovakia, Greece, Panama, Bulgaria, Indonesia, Argentina, Poland, Brazil, Ghana, Croatia, Hungary, Colombia, Peru, El Salvador, Romania, Serbia, Hong Kong, Singapore, Georgia, Honduras, Ecuador, Bangladesh, Ukraine, Bolivia, Turkey, Kenya, Thailand, Lebanon, Nicaragua, Venezuela, Palestine, Pakistan, Iraq, and Haiti all have voter ID laws, and all of will put your butt in jail if you are not a citizen and vote in their elections.
Okay, now hold up on this, because I think what she's basically getting at, because there was a bit of a controversy with this homeboy whose name is Ely Mystical. Is that right?
That's what his name should be.
Yeah, so
he's a fat rap artist. Ely Mystical.
So it's
It's a
funny
new
because
style.
let's bring it back. So we just saw that South Africa has voter ID laws, right?
Yeah.
Right. He's saying that South Africa system, we should replace our constitution, right? And he says it should be replaced with the South African constitution because that's the best. Just this is very short. Listen to this.
South Africa got over apartheid. Did they just go back to their Afrikaner racist constitution and be like, oh, we just need a couple of amendments. We just need a couple of changes here to make it work? No, they threw the whole thing out and started again, this time asking everybody. Wow. This time having a completely new delegation of all of the people of South Africa, not just the white folks, but not no white folks. And they came up with a new constitution. It's one of the reasons why the South African constitution is generally thought of as one of the best constitutions in the world.
Which is not true, by the way, but let's just finish listening.
And ours continues to be a piece of crap.
So what laws would you kick out immediately? What laws are you saying it needs to get the fuck out of here?
Yeah, so the first one I have in my book is that I want to eliminate every single voter registration law.
Boom. Every single, we just saw what she's saying, that voter registration is used to all this crap, right? He's saying, let's just use the South African, ways of the Constitution, right? And what did we just read? Well, who's there is right there. I'm sorry, what was that? Countries with voter ID. I'm sorry, right under Lithuania. What is that?
South Africa.
That's South Africa, right?
And
there.
I believe if you went over there en masse, like we've had illegal immigrants come here and try to vote, good luck with that. Good luck with that.
With keeping South Africa, South Africa.
And he shouldn't be listened to because, as Sir Glenn said, I haven't seen anyone sporting a comb like that since the 70s. I don't know why he wears his hair like that. And no one, you're right, has been doing that for a while. I mean, he should cut it down. I don't have a problem with you sporting a fro if you want to have a fro, but come on, man.
No, it says
there's limits.
He did go further on this because he did talk about that there is no thing as voter fraud. That's I didn't know that did you know that? There's no such thing as fraud. We just heard that there was voter fraud, right? They already are prosecuting. He says there isn't.
I want to eliminate every single voter registration law. All of them in every state are bad, right? That's different from voter eligibility. If you're eligible to vote, you should just be able to rock up to the polls and vote. So we could just get rid of all of them. We could just get rid of all of them. And the people will say like, oh, well, we can't do that because of voter fraud, right? Well, first of all, and I know this is going to be hard for some listeners who spend a lot of time listening to.
He's wearing a comb in his head. I'm sorry. I can't believe you don't want to talk about that. He's wearing a comb. I'm sorry. This is so distracting. It's not just that he has an afro. Isn't there on the left? That's an actual afro pick.
He's got an afro pick.
He's wearing it.
Yeah.
While on a televised podcast.
Yeah, well, he's trying to prove that it's down.
All right. Proceed.
Fraud does not exist.
I loved how you broke that down in the book. Expound, please.
Right?
Yeah.
Voter fraud just doesn't exist. It's not a real thing. We shouldn't make laws based on protecting us from things that don't exist. Right? Republicans keep saying we.
So I mean, and we
what
were
is
just
he talking about.
We were just listening to that. We were just basically saying, like, hold up. Let's actually listen.
The Foundation has a very good project, it's obviously right-leaning, where they're studying all cases of fraud. I looked at it before we were here. There's only been 24 cases since 2003 of somebody who's a non-citizen trying to vote. Now, those are people caught. So this would be incredibly dramatic if it was even 1,000 people.
Oh no, Jason, it's more than 1,000. I've seen it. I've seen the data myself, and it's more than 1,000 in just a couple of states. I mean, it is shockingly bad. And this is the tip of the iceberg, guys. It's the tip of the iceberg.
That's it right there. In other words, that's the two shades right there.
But you don't even have to even do that, because we already know it's a lie. Because already in every state, we have seen somebody get arrested for voter fraud.
Right.
And it's not only illegal aliens who do it. There actually are people who shouldn't be voting or who vote twice. There's a woman I recall reading about in the paper, I think in the last election, not this most recent one, but she was, charged with felonies because she was voting like all over town, You can't do that either. So the idea that that voting fraud doesn't exist is
exist.
absurd.
Right,
Of course
right.
it exists. I mean, there's people who lose their right to vote for different reasons. Sometimes it might be because they committed a felony and are in a state where they don't get that right back. Some states will restore someone's civil rights, like to vote, and others do not. If you don't have the right to vote, then you are committing fraud if you do. So the idea, he says, well, if you're eligible to vote, you should just be able to rock up to the polls and vote. But that's the whole point, dummy. We don't know if they're eligible. They need to be on the roll. They need to register. And then we need to know, I mean, this dummy would not throw a party wherever he is, right? And, you know, have it be open, like say by invitation only, because you can only feed so many people. Say, you know, it's a party, like you having a private event, maybe, you know, let's say it's a wedding, and you know, you're busy. So you have people at the front door with a list, right? With a list, you're going to check it against them. That's just basic common sense. And because in the case of people, you know, who have it in their best interest to sneak in, you might ask, maybe not at a party, because, you know, how many people really care to go to your wedding? But many people might want to change the rules of the United States so they get more benefits. So there is more need to be like, let me see your ID. I mean, I've been places that are not, you know, like when I go to a hotel and I'm invited to say, you know, this has happened many times, you know, right? You and I are invited sometimes to places, and they paid our hotel ahead of time for us to speak or what have you, right, Fletcher?
Right.
When we show up to the hotel and I say, you know, hi, it's Ursula, and you know, it's Fletcher, and they are like, oh, great, yeah, it looks like we have you here for a couple of nights. Can I see your ID? Yeah, they're checking to make sure we are who we say we are. And it's not like they're not doing it because, you know, they necessarily, you know, they want to make sure we are who we say we are, and then they hand over a key to something valuable, right? Which is the room, you know, because once I'm in there, I could charge to the room, you know, we could break it up. We could, you know, it's valuable. So they want to make sure, even though it's already prepaid, who are you? Let me see. And in some cases, even give me your credit card to make sure. So that's all we're saying. It's not, you know, it's not that big a deal. It's not that big a deal for him to say that. And for, you know, and I'm going to say, I think it's kind of disgusting for a Black man to stand up there and say the Constitution is crap, because it's not.
No, it's so ridiculous and disingenuous, right?
Please read Sir Glenn's comment. He's on fire today. He's on fire. It's cracking me up.
If you have a mouth and teeth, you should be able to roll up on McDonald's and get free food.
That's the exact same.
Roll up.
Okay, listen, Sir Glenn, I don't know what you're taking right now to be this sharp and clever and funny, but you need to privately let us know what it is. As long as it's not illegal, we're buying it too. I don't know if you're taking that ginkgo biloba, but you are cracking me up today. I mean, you're always funny, but you're not as funny as you have been today. That is so true. That's the exact same thing. Like he's saying, if you are able to be a warm body and you can get to the polls, you should be able to roll up and vote. It's the same as saying, if you have a mouth and teeth, you should be able to roll up to McDonald's and get free food. No. McDonald's is not entitled to give you free food without being eligible for the food that they have, which is to pay for it, which means you have to have some legitimate means of giving them, you know, real cash, real credit card, okay, or some other means, you know, Apple Pay, what have you, EBT, if they take it. You know, you can't just roll up because you want to and have the ability to eat food, be able to get it. It's the same thing. You're in a country, you know, because that's what I think. That's why I think it's a great analogy, Sir Glenn. Thank you. Because this mystical, that's what he's saying, is almost like if you are in the country, however you got here, and you're able to get to the polls, then you should be able to vote. I mean, I bet he doesn't agree for age either. So if you're 13, hey, you're able to get there.
Right, you're able to
There's no eligibility. There's no eligibility rules. If you're 12, if you are autistic, retarded, but not like a little bit, even if you don't understand the English language, you don't understand anything, you should be able to go in there and vote. You should just for no reasons.
How about if your son is you know, disabled or basically, God forbid, in a coma, you should be able to roll them up there.
Yeah. Let them vote.
And let them vote, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
Where does it stop?
It doesn't stop anywhere.
Dig up your grandma. Well, we know they do that already.
And the reason why, honestly, with legal citizenship, because because we have family members who have done this process. And Fletcher, you know about this process as well, because you also have done this process.
Yeah.
You have to show basic understanding. That's the reason how you become a citizen, is that they want you to know a little bit of history. You have to speak basic of the language. You don't have to be perfect. No one's asking for that. But we do want you to have some basic understanding of the language. We want you to have a basic understanding of civic government. We want you to understand what your responsibilities of being a citizen are, what your rights are, what your duties are. Right? That's what it is that we expect that children growing up here would have. So we want you coming in as an adopted member of the family to also know those rules. And that's why you're eligible to vote. Okay. Now we don't check this with everybody. There's not test taking across but the idea is that's what we hope. We hope that everyone has those basics. That's why there's minimal requirements, threshold that you have to be a citizen. And it's not saying you can't be a citizen, if you're not perfect. That's not what we're saying. We're not saying you can't be disabled. We're saying that there are some minimal standards, and those eligibilities are really easy to show. It's not that hard. People have for a long time been able to do it. And so for him to say there should be no issues with, no laws, and also lying and saying that there's no fraud, it's a very, I would say, disappointing thing for him to do.
No, yeah, completely. And we have the secret. We have the secret to Sir Glenn's sharpness.
What is it, Fletcher?
It's wintergreen lifesavers.
Order a bunch.
All right, we'll have that on the what is it? It's the list. When you the shopping list, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
they must have like some special ingredient. We'll take it before we get on the podcast next time.
Before you take it,
get some wintergreen lifesavers.
No, that's what you need. Just get some wintergreen lifesavers and you're set, right?
Yeah.
But it's we did want to talk a little bit about our how we feel our faith is being portrayed.
Yeah, right? I think we want to. So we are a channel that is Catholic, and we do feel we should have a little bit more content about that. And one thing that we have been talking about is the Pope has been in the news a lot lately. He's been sick. He's also been in the news a lot during his entire pontificate for a lot of controversial statements. That's going to be another show. We don't have time to take that apart. But what we do think is important to point out to people, because Catholics are still a minority in the United States, although they're not in other countries, is that what is the role of the Pope? So I read today, and this is what got us to do this. Someone said, you know what, Catholics, stop hoping in the Pope and trust in Jesus. And that was a very strange comment to me, because we trust in Jesus. There is only one Lord and Savior. His name is Jesus Christ. There is no other name under heaven whereby men can be saved but by Jesus. We don't put hope in the Pope. What the Pope is a pastor. I think the problem that we have with people who don't know that we are an ancient church, we have been around for 2,000 years, is that we use words that are no longer familiar or common, such as Pope, and also because we are a universal church. The word Catholic means universal. There is a Catholic church in every country and has been for a long time. It's not like, say, certain Lutheran churches. Like, you can go to some countries, there's never been one, or there's no Pentecostal church, whatever. There's a Catholic church everywhere. It's a universal church. So we have to have a universal language. And so we have used alternatively Latin, sometimes Italian, because the Pope, for a long time, since Peter went to Rome, there has been a Pope in Rome as their headquarters. So we have made Italian, and the word Papa, El Papa, it just means like leader, head, or father. It doesn't mean that we treat them like God the Father, which we can't do. The Bible says very clearly there's only one Father. That's what we mean. We don't mean that. We mean it the same way you mean like your dad. We're saying he's the head pastor, the shepherd of the church. In fact, the titles of the Pope are the shepherd of the church, the servant of the servants of God, the vicar. The vicar of Christ is one. Vicar is the name that was used in antiquity for someone who served the king. Christ is king. And so every king has somebody who helps them, right? Even the king doesn't do things alone. And he had a vicar, and that person would get the so-called keys of the closet or keys of the kingdom. That's what Jesus said to Peter when he says, I give you the keys to the kingdom. And whatever you bind on earth and bind on earth. We can talk about that as another one when we talk about the role of Peter and why we think, the Pope is primary. But just from a basic understanding, no, we don't worship the Pope. He's a man. He is like you and I. He's not better than you or I. He's not better than Fletcher. He's not better than Ursula. He's not better than Sir Glenn. He's not better than Lady Jen. He's not better than anybody. No, he is just a pastor. Just like a lot of Protestants in your churches, you have a pastor that you look up to, that you might think of almost like another dad in a sense, especially if he's, someone you're close to. That's the affection with which we call the Pope. The Pope, that's a nickname. His true name is the Vicar of Christ, the pastor of the Universal Church. That's another one of the names, the Bishop of Rome. In fact, the title of the Pope, the number one title is Bishop of Rome, because since the time of Peter, the person who's the head of the church always lives in Rome, because we are everywhere. So you have to have a place that he's going to live. And they chose Rome because that's the eternal city. It's been there a long time and has been a place where Christianity was adopted really early. So we call him the Bishop of Rome because he is the head. He's the head honcho. Also, we say Vicar of Christ, servant of the servants of God, the universal pastor. And the nickname is Papa because we say you're like dad of the church.
No, completely. And I think a lot of people don't understand that he's the head servant. So people would think, he's just lavishing in luxury, because he's got the gold, gold scepter, and he's like Scrooge McDuck. At night he like jumps into a bath of gold and he swims in it, or he has all kinds of crazy things. Most of the time, popes are basically studying, reading what's going on in the church. It's a world church. It's got billions of followers. It's not a small congregation. He has to oversee all that, and a lot of things get lost in the translation. And I know most of the time I get called Pope Splainer sometimes in X or whatever. And
that's a different issue, Fletcher, and you are a Pope Splainer.
In a sense, basically, if people are not in our circles.
No, well, we should explain what that means, because we again, the whole point of this is to make things more clear, and I don't want us to get off on other issues, but what Fletcher is talking about when he says Pope splaining is that this particular Pope, which he's showing, was Pope Francis. Every Pope will take a new name when they get elected to show their new self, the same way like Peter was formerly known as Simon and his name was changed. Paul was formerly known as Saul, but then when he came to Christ, it was changed to Paul. And it happened to a lot of people. So the church has maintained that tradition. And so he became Pope Francis, although his real name was Jorge Bergoglio. And Pope splaining refers to the fact that a lot of people, which we'll do in another segment, don't really care for some of these Pope's statements and some things that he's done or said. And then there's people who say, look, let me explain it to you. And so some people have derogatorily called that Pope splaining. They're saying, instead of just admitting that he might have done something that we don't think is really justified or in line with church teaching, you're trying to explain it. So I'm sorry, Fletcher, to interrupt you. I just want to make sure people understood that, since the whole purpose of this is to explain our faith.
No, completely. And I think a lot of the times people do misunderstand in general kind of what the Pope does, because I have John Paul II, which is I guess in our generation the most known and most beloved Pope in a long time. And most of his time was spent fasting. Literally, the nuns that take care of him would have to watch out for that. Also, the Pope after that, Benedict, he also was, a little bit different, but he spent most of his time writing. He wrote some great books. Also, John Paul II wrote some great books. So they're very diligent to their work as the pastor of the church, the head pastor. But most, as they're known, are the head servant. Because even though, yes, they do get red Gucci shoes. Are they Gucci shoes?
Prada.
They're Prada. I apologize. The red Prada shoes, and they think, well, because Pradas are thousands of dollars, those are not sold to the church. Those are given because the Prada is it was started by Catholics, and their family tradition was that they would be honored to create like lace shoes for the Pope, and it became a tradition, like most of the things in the church that has been there for thousands of years. They have traditions that they keep, and one of Prada's traditions throughout their family, being an old brand in Italy, was they get the honor to make the shoes for the Pope. And if you are making something for a loved one or somebody that you highly esteem, you're not going to make something shoddy, right? And I'm sure the popes would rather wear probably sandals or barefoot. I guarantee you, there's no question about that. Were they bad popes? Yeah. There's been some bad popes. The church still stands, but the majority of the newer popes, I can guarantee you, they would rather wear something not fancy. The nearest Pope Francis, he doesn't want to wear even gold crosses that they have on in the Vatican. He'd rather wear a wooden one because he's a Franciscan. But it's not that they're doing this for lavishness. They do it because it's the honor, the family they gave it to them. It's honor and tradition. So it's not some secret mystical, dipping in the blood of children or something. That's what the red shoes are. They're just there because it was an honor and a tradition.
There's a reason they're red. The red shoes are to symbolize the martyrs who died, who shed their blood for the church. That's what we walk in, that we are literally alive because of the martyrs. Because aside from martyrdom, and the first one, of course, being Christ himself, there would be no church. As the Bible says, unless a seed falls to the earth and dies, it does not bear fruit. And so we've always said the blood of the martyrs is the seed of the church. And so all cardinals, of which the Bishop of Rome is one, okay, so they're the highest elders in the church. They're the bishops. They wear often red shoes, okay? And people have all this whole symbolism about them. And I love a good conspiracy theory like anyone else, but they've worn these for 2,000 years. Once they started wearing shoes, like Fletcher said, a lot of times they were barefoot and wore sandals. But as the church grew and became more pronounced and saw itself also as being a world player, as having, a voice, because, we're meant to be a city on a hill that cannot be hid. So we're not meant to be hiding our light under a bushel. We want to be involved in what the world says about things. We want to have a say. And so as a result of that, the church does speak and has on many important issues. You have here Pope John Paul II, who many people credit with bringing down communism in the world by his prayers, by his speaking, by his really defiant and courageous witness. He apparently, I believe in Poland, a part of Poland where communists had taken over all of Poland, actually, he was himself imprisoned as a young man and attended seminary in secret, because it was against the law to be a Christian. It was against the law. And he continued to fight against that. And at one point, although it was allowed to be Christian anymore, you couldn't have a public service. And he decided to have mass in the open. They said, you're going to get shot. He did it anyway. And so the idea is that he went with, I guess, Ronald Reagan, Thatcher, and all of them to try to bring an end to the Cold War and communism. So again, we're not meant to just hide on the sidelines. Sometimes people want to do this so-called separation of church and state, but God never said that. And in fact, the Constitution doesn't either. That's what liberals, leftists have interpreted it to mean. We are supposed to be able to speak up and to do those things. We're not supposed to look to the government for everything. That's not very Christian or holy. But as far as like influencing the world where we live, we are in the world, right? We're not supposed to be of it, but we're supposed to be in it. And that is what we're doing. And so, all of these things that people say, like, they don't understand the purpose. They don't understand like what these things are about. So that's why we want to have this conversation. I thank you, Sir Glenn, for saying thanks for the definition too, because we know that it has a lot of people from America are not Catholic, they're Christians like we are, but they're from different denominations that actually existed after Catholicism, but the country is still rather new and only, 250 years old. soon to be. So they won't know a church tradition that goes sometimes back 1,200 years when, popes were wearing red shoes. And so have this idea of what it means. It doesn't mean that.
No, completely. And we just wanted to share with you guys a little bit about it because there is this mysticism that some people have implanted, some out of ignorance, some out of, they want this whole conspiracy theory things to be true. I mean, yeah, there's plenty of conspiracy theories to go around and all, and everywhere. And has the church done something interesting or something weird? Yeah, I'm sure there is. There's plenty. I mean, you got 2,000 years of history. But
I'm not laughing at you, Fletcher. I'm laughing at Sir Glenn, who's still taking those wintergreen lifesavers and cracking me up.
Oh yeah, no, I'll bring it up. I just wanted to
Sorry, I'm being bad. I apologize.
No. So let's see what it says. So David said, does the Pope ever take one of those UFOs they keep in the Vatican basement out for a spin around Italy? Now, I won't put it past him because the church does. This is a funny thing about the church is that I heard somebody said that the church won't open its archives to people, basically because they said they have UFOs, they have all kinds of things that will change history as we know it. Most of the Vatican libraries are open to the public. The closeness of it is a lot of things are relic. They're so old that they have to be handled a certain way. So you have to, you have to show yourself, one, to be respectful enough to the relic, but also knowledgeable enough not to damage it. I think some certain parchments are kept in chambers away from light. And so there is, I know some people were talking about some UFOs that are in the Vatican or something.
I never heard that, and I wouldn't doubt it.
No, I wouldn't doubt it. But the fact that it's closed stuff and nobody can see it, yeah, I don't buy that one. Because
I buy it. Well, I mean, maybe not that one, but I mean, I think the fact is this. I mean, let's be honest. I do think people should not associate. So first of all, and that might be another show because we have to probably round this up soon. I don't know what you're thinking, Fletcher, but about it. And I'm sorry we interrupted you, but the Vatican is separate from the church. The Vatican is an actual city-state. It's an actual sovereign nation. Most people don't realize that it actually is a country. I don't think they have voter ID, but in fact, I bet they do. And they have very strict immigration laws, but it actually is a country. It's the smallest country in the entire world, but it is listed in the World Register of Nations. It actually is. I've been to that country, and they have their own currency, their own language. It's Latin, of course, and its own rules of immigration. I think only 250 citizens are in Vatican City, but that is the name of the country. It's not Italy. It's actually Vatican City. It's its own country. And Italy is around it, also its own country. So the Vatican is not our church. It is associated with it. It's certainly the political side of our church. It would be as though, let's say you're a Baptist. If you think of it this way, it might be easier. You have your own church, right? You have your own pastor, but you might belong to a conference like the Southern Baptist Conference. And the Southern Baptist Conference is not your church per se. It is over it to some extent. There's some political factions of it, but that's not essentially what your Baptist church, if that makes sense. That's the best thing I can think of. And so, yeah, the Vatican may house, it has a lot of stuff. And Fletcher's completely right. A lot of it is really antiques and relics that people just can't come because they could steal it. They've lost things that way before, or they can damage it. But it's not, but it has this kind of is shrouded in mystery because of that, again, 2,000-year-old church.
No, completely. What I'm showing here is the Vatican Apostolic Archives, and this is from 2020 file photo, and it houses over 50 miles of papal letters, presidential missiles, and historical records. And as you can see, it's not like it's not a mystery where some it's keeping some angel stuff. So what I think Sir Glenn's talking about it is that the Vatican archivists are mad rush to digitize what they have, to preserve it. They have to prioritize what they think is most important. They aren't really prioritizing orbs that are bothering the nuns in the 1800s, which is the records, as Sir Glenn says, of aliens that people say they house. So they are nuns that saw orbs, and there's record of that. So, but that's not the priority mostly of the faith. And I know that scientists like Gary Nolan, a professor of medicine at Stanford, views the Vatican archives as a potential treasure trove for understanding UFOs, because the Vatican's probably the oldest library system of, what should we say, paranormal, supernatural knowledge that exists. So the archive has an aura of both mysticism and feeling of deep truth. But they are these articles from the United States Catholic bishops. We do have the sense of aliens or angels and all that kind of stuff, but they are open, and it's not of trying to keep people out. It's a race against time to digitize as much as they can. The priority mostly is church history and church fathers, much less than orbs and stuff that the nuns have seen. But I do believe that they're trying to facilitate as much as they can in a way that they can, because unfortunately things have gone missing, and it's a lot of history and responsibility. So I don't think they'll just let anybody in. But as you said, we do want to get on with the or kind of thing that should we say? I did have something funny that I think was cute. And I did saw this nuns playing football. I thought that was hilarious.
You mean soccer?
Yeah, well, I heard it both ways, the right way and then yours. And I thought this was really cute too. So this is a FedEx man who was delivering a package, but he did stop to pray. Because I guess there was a shrine. We do have little shrines as Catholics that we adjourn to, and he saw it and he made a delivery. I thought it was really cool.
Aw, that's very sweet.
I thought that was
the holy FedEx driver. That's awesome.
The holy driver, yeah. Like Coda is like the one that he's not gonna mess up your packages. It's like, thank you, holy FedEx driver.
That's so funny. That's great.
It's like, guarantee that your package are gonna arrive.
Yeah, I would trust that man. You could trust him with your company. That's for sure. He's not going to. He realizes that somebody else is watching, so that's pretty cool.
No, completely. And we do want to do something funny, because we usually do something funny, and I thought this I think it was our generation. It's the difference between Generation X and Generation C, right? So this is the difference between like a Generation X talking to a Generation C, but they're cats. So
you just be like running around the neighborhood and your parents wouldn't know where you are? Yep, just had to be back by dinner time. Which was around what time? Around sunset-ish time. Sunset-ish time? What's that? I don't know, like between 5 and 9. 5 and 9? It really wasn't that big of a deal. Okay, did you have a phone? No, they weren't invented yet. So on top of your parents letting you run around without knowing where you are, they also had no way to communicate with you to find out. Yeah, that's pretty much the gist of it. How did you not get abducted? I don't know, maybe that stuff wasn't as prevalent when I was a kid. It's also entirely possible that my generation has more common sense. We're smarter and tougher than your generation. Nah, I don't believe that. I think that is the case, and I can prove to you. If you just follow me to my van, I'll show you. Your van? There's candy. Okay. So you just be like running around the neighborhood.
Remember that whole thing? It's like, don't go to strangers with candy and stuff in a van. So I thought that was funny to share.
It's also really true, and we did drink hose water.
We did drink hose water and made ramps out of plywood or anything, and we would jump off of it.
We jumped off anything.
We jump off anything.
We jumped off anything.
That's right. Daredevils. They were the daredevils at the time. But thank you so much for hanging out with us. Thank you for Lady Jen. Thank you for Sir Shelby, and thank you so much for David Glenn for hanging out with us today.
Played with lawn darts.
We did play with lawn darts. Those things are dangerous. Those things were,
and we're better for it.
And we're better for it. We liked it, yeah. So, but thank you. Let us know what you think of the Saturday afternoon. We think it's easier for us, but if you like it, let us know. And we'll catch you
on the flippity flip.
Flippity flip. Yeah. Check out our shorts and streams. So yeah, thank you so much. Have a good one.
Subscribe, share.
There you go. That's what you should do.
Ave Maria, Maria, rogai por nós, Santa Mãe de Deus.